The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spent a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. It was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kīlauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS-HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? It was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed and we knew we were getting to the local community and people were asking questions. So those were the best, I think. I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally got.
Hello everyone, welcome to our Hawaiian Volcano Tracker for November 26th, 2025. Kīlauea has erupted its 37th episode of its ongoing summit eruption, so that'll be our focus of our recap today. How are you doing, gentlemen? How's it going, Dane?
Doing pretty good, yeah. Got to see some, new lava fountain just before Thanksgiving. Kind of reminds us 2022 almost that same time frame, right? So interesting. Lou?
Yeah.
You're muted.
The precursory kind of took us again a little while, but it seemed like yesterday snuck up on us. And good timing right before Thanksgiving, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So we have plenty to recap today. We'll try to get through it as quickly as possible since we're not in our usual date and time, but we'll time mahalo to Pele and we'll go from there, yeah? Anything else, guys, before we get into it here?
All good. Let's roll it.
All right.
We do one more thing. We are trying out today on YouTube 2 different versions. So we have a horizontal and a vertical live stream going. So if you're asking, where is the stream, there is 2 up. So try the other one if you want to change.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dan. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate all your feedback. We keep trying to continually improve. Right. I should have mentioned that we're HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education Resilience Institute. We're a nonprofit whose mission is to improve disaster preparedness through education and building relationships. So here we are, and that's the point of our outreach here today. So, all right, let's turn to our volcano summary, which is here, and get this going for you guys. Hello, everyone. This is our Hawaiian Volcano Summary for November 26, 2025. Following a 16-day pause, Kīlauea has its 37th episode. Yesterday, this past Tuesday, right before Thanksgiving, we had 9 hours of vigorous fountaining from about 2:30 p.m. to about 11:39 p.m., which you can see here captured in this time lapse from the V1 camera from the USGS-HVO. So there was quite a bit of precursor activity with 76 overflows ever since Friday morning. Here you see the view from the V3 camera, which shows that fountain from the north vent only, with no activity as far as lava ejection from the south vent. We do have some flaming and spattering happening there, but no lava being put out. So the reduction in output to just one vent compared to the previous 3 episodes led us to have some different impacts, such as an eruption that lasted twice as long, while still putting out the same amount of lava over those 9 hours. This is a view from the east from the B1 camera, showing that flow hitting that eastern edge of the crater floor, and then having a few overturning events overnight and then over the course of today as well. So looking at the volumes for this eruption, episode 37 of the eruption had about 6 million cubic meters, which is a huge, massive amount of lava, but a little bit lower than we've had for the previous 3. And combined with a longer length of time, 9 hours versus the 5 of the previous one, it means we were back to our previous average discharge rate of lava coming out like it was before, meaning we're past this small episode of 3 very high discharge episodes. And correspondingly, we also seem to have had some blockage of the vent that split the fountain into multiple strands and reduced in a smaller fountain height of around 600 feet or 180 meters or so. So current look into the volcano from the V2 camera here, you see a lot of degassing still, which combined with light winds are causing some fog in the summit area, as was the case during eruption as well. Looking at the tilt graph, we see here the inflation building up to episode 37, as well as the deflation that accompanied it. So we fit into the pattern just like before. We're recharging just like before, expecting another episode coming in the next few weeks. But if we zoom in a little more closely to the week-long period of this tilt graph, we see not only this deflation corresponding to the eruption episode discharge of lava, but also the spike, which corresponds to a magnitude 4.6 earthquake on the south flank. The USGS puts out an information statement stating that it does not appear directly related to the eruption. There may be some indirect connections we explore in our full update, but no direct impact of the lava shutoff and the earthquake itself. It rather fits into the typical pattern of south flank earthquakes in that region. So here's a map. There is that big earthquake from yesterday and other south flank events in these reds and oranges and yellows, as well as in blues from Pahala and some summit events happening at a low rate as well. Looking at the counts per week over the last year, we can see here we're still at very low background levels compared to the time before this eruption, where you see what a ramp up to change in the status quo looks like right there. All right, so back to the USGS update. We do not have enough data yet, just one day after the episode end to make an official forecast. However, at least a week away is the official award there. And as a reminder, this is all happening within a summit crater of Kīlauea within a national park and out of threat to people. USGS reporting that no fallout of lava bits or tephra on the road anywhere in the surrounding areas. However, there is still fog being emitted from the volcano in this inter-episode period, and you can see the forecast bringing it down to the Kau areas as usual, as well as with some weak winds bringing it north into the saddle region as well. So the most recent purple air monitoring network view looks like this, with green signals around the volcano area, but further away where the fog may have been carried, seeing impacts on the saddle or the Kona side as well. So turning briefly to Mauna Loa, whose 3-year anniversary of its eruption is tomorrow. We're still in alert level normal aviation code green here from the monthly update back on November 6th, with earthquakes over the month looking, showing concentrations under the summit and in the northwest quadrant, which is typical areas. But over the last week, you can see it's much slower here. Looking at the counts per week over the last year, you can see the spike was 3 weeks ago here, corresponding to that earthquake flow rate in the northwest quadrant. And since then, we've decreased substantially. And all that is just a small bump on the grand scheme of the 5-year earthquakes per month, where you see what ramp up to an eruption in Mauna Loa actually looks like there. So this is all just a background filling and small variations. But it is worth noting that since then, in the last couple of weeks, we have had a contraction in Mauna Loa summit, as well as a subsidence with a summit dropping down slightly in elevation as well, showing a slight pause, a little vacation, if you will, on this anniversary coming up. And this doesn't change the long-term prognosis. It's just a typical thing we've seen happen before, and likely we see the pattern continue of long-term filling, eventually leading to an eruption down the road. And that's our summary for this week. So we'll move on to our hazards, which are still largely the gas. And I'll start off by showing this time lapse from the KP camera on the side of Mauna Loa, looking south at Kīlauea. Here's Kīlauea summit caldera, and there's the gas plume drifting across the Kau Desert from its source right here in the crater at the vent complex right there. So I'll play this. You can see it starts off low to the ground. The wind changes direction quite a bit. Some weather comes in, obscures things, but once it gets to be night, you can really see the height and shape of this cloud, right? And even the next morning, this morning, you can saw a little bit of that before the weather came and blocked it one more time. So looking for it once again, the eruption starts around here, a little obscured, but once it comes night, you see that big flat fan area where the cloud is dispersing up there. Let's see if I can pull one of these shots and freeze it for you guys, something like that, right? Where you really see, freeze it, I said, there we go. We really see it fanning out there across, really fascinating. Weak winds, we saw several of the cameras all around the crater with falling tephra crossing the field of view, and monitors in the area all showing elevated readings as well. So, but before we come to that, here's another view. This is the K2 camera at Uekahuna. So there from that morning, there is the degassing. You see some changes in wind direction before the fountain becomes visible. So you don't see so much tephra falling in this location. You do see the wind change direction a bit somewhat there, but more is going straight up. Whereas this morning, you saw it actually come closer to straight out to camera, some of these frames in here. But during eruption itself, we more have a vertical, you can see this almost straight up, not even leaning over in any direction that way or that way, just straight up and rising to great heights and dispersing in the nearby areas as well. So that's the K2 camera. And finally, the S2 camera will show you guys a full sequence of the overflows from the south vent and north vent both. So these began on Friday night and initially were alternating between the two vents before Friday night, when they became mostly from the south vent, where you see these continuous pulses of overflows coming through. It was 73 before the day of the eruption, where we had a few more, 3 more before the main fountains came on right there. And you can see only from the north vent, nothing from the south vent. We'll come to that in a few minutes here. But the other thing to note there is, as I play it again, is the wind direction. You can see here to start, fairly strong wind blowing trades everything away. And then as the winds weaken, the plume gets a little higher, and eventually you can see it going straight up during the actual eruption itself. Episode, I should say, right? It's easy to misspeak there. So here's our overflows. There is a plume almost straight up, maybe coming a little bit of the camera in some of these frames. I can maybe find some of these where you can actually see the tephra in a foreground here. I like that one, for example, right there. See these black dots are all the tephra falling in the field of view here. And so that is the main impact. So looking at the VOG measurement and prediction program from UH Manoa, we like to focus on the VOG dashboard here, but this website is great if you want to find more information. You can look this up. And here is the forecast dashboard. So for the emission source at Kīlauea Summit, speed this up a little bit here, showing the dispersal of the gas with the current weather model. So you see mostly going down here towards Kau, and everything looks like it's in the green currently here. But if I, for example, click here on this ocean view reading, you can see that it was actually all the way up to 0.06 ppm of SO2 here earlier today. Some of these other ones also have occasional concentrations that's close to 0.1. I come up here to the volcano one, you see it's, I don't know, less than 0.1, less than 0.01 even, right? So fairly low readings, but actually pretty high over here in the ocean view area where this plume seems to be concentrating from time to time. So that's the SO2, the plain flavored raw gas emitted that we know turns into this SO4 sulfate aerosols over time as it sits in the atmosphere. It reacts and causes these particles to form as aerosols. So that's what we're detecting in the PM 2.5 monitors, and what you see here dispersing in a wider area than that pure SO2 component. So you can see how it can really have this hanging haze in this South Kona area, as well as in the Saddle and Waikoloa areas. So that's the VOG forecast. We can go into some of the current data, as we often do, from the state to start, with everything looking in the green. So I'll just maybe show you that this is there, as well as the Hawaii SO2 index with everything still in the green. And all these, you can go back and get some history and see that, look, it actually was in yellow several times here. Sometimes there's some data missing. But we also have purple air, and I like this one the best just because it's got the most dots on it, the most data that we can actually look at. And it lets you compare some of the historical trends here too. So for example, I can click on this station right up here, which was one that got quite a bit of VOG from the eruption episode 37. And you can see here in this top left corner, try to zoom it in right there, how that pulse of gas came across, lasted those 9 hours, and then went back down again here, right? And so what's cool with this is I can click on other stations and then click on some of these stations hosted by the national park. And that one's in orange, but you can see it's showing a similar pattern there. And let's click another one here too, and you can just start stacking. And you can see that many of these stations had similar patterns with the readings with the spike coming through right here. However, down here at Ocean View, which is a different direction of the wind, if we put that one on there, well, that one's looking like it's pretty steadily high, so I'm not sure how much we believe that one. Let's try one of the other ones here. Take that one off, can we? Well, this might be getting too complicated here, but in any case, you can see that many of these areas have this pulse of gas coming across here. And if you see it and smell it, you think you're seeing it, it's probably what you are detecting, in fact. So that's purple air. I did take a screenshot during the episode. So here's like what it was looking at the time. as that pulse was ongoing, and you can see higher values here on this further uphill area that maybe caught more of that gas that was lofted into the sky there, as well as elevated areas here, all on a yellow and orange around the national park, with even Volcano Village showing elevated values too. So in a national park, I was looking at how this actually plays out. If we look right now, we actually have one station in the red. It's rare to see that on the map. Actually, there's another one down here in Kahuku, also in the red, showing wind north-northeast. I'm not sure what's going on with the circle over here, but something seems a little off there. But looking at the charts, let's try to make this a little bigger here. More. That'll work there. So you can see that at Wikahuna, there have been spikes here at 1:30 p.m. of unhealthy, as well as 1 p.m. At Kahuku, many different spikes here, up to the hazardous, past the unhealthy, past the very unhealthy to hazardous. There is the cross vent area, so you can see lots of different areas picking up impacts of the gas during the event. Looking at the Mounts project here, let's see if I can give this a refresh. And let's see if we can get anything more current. Here. So we don't have the most current satellite capture coming in, but we do have the pattern of the low-level emissions earlier during the week. So that's what you're seeing here in this map. There's the 21st. It'll be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We don't really catch an image. Monday either. It's interesting because the USGS reports that from Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, they actually had increased gas emissions, where the background levels between episodes is usually 1,200 to 1,500 tons per day, and they reported 3,000 to 4,000 tons per day for these 3 days. And so you can see a little bit maybe darker concentrations here in the middle, but similar distribution of the gas, both to the southwest and to the north. And finally, the other interesting thing is look at the global picture. So here's windy.com. Here is our little extra dot of red that we emitted over the 9 hours. And actually, there's quite a bit more of that blowing across the Pacific today. And there's some action with volcanoes over in Japan and other things happening. So today we do see that, how we fit into the global pattern, and we just see that there are other contributors as well. So it's still pretty cool to see that continued patch and how that eventually works its way over to the mainland and can cause some visibility issues over the west coast here. So that's our hazard summary, looking at the gases. We'll turn now to the visual observations and start with a quick live look-in. There's a V3 camera showing that degassing. V2, different angle there. And the V1. It's all degassing currently. And so let's step back to the 21st, and the USGS releases a photo and video chronology of their summit overflight. And so let's start off with a video here. Here they are hovering over the vent area, spinning around. You see the big sulfur deposits. Here's the actual vent, fuming massively. This is still during the beginning of those overflow sequence. So here they are approaching the vent and pointing the camera down into the throat, and look, there is the lava. Maybe I can zoom it in. There it is. You see it bubbling and roiling around in there. So it's coming up, releasing the gas and diving back down. And that's the video that we have right there. So pretty cool to see that. And they also go and collect samples of episodes 34, 35, and 36, tagging them in all the proper bags here. So that's what they're doing here. Here they are breaking rocks down into manageable size to fit in the bags and to bring back on a helicopter since everything's flown out of there. A view of that back wall where all the lava spray has been landing and causing all this slumping, all this flowing material going downhill. And then in the foreground here, you see the V3 live cam with its battery and electronic pack. And interesting how it's on the correct side of this big crack. You see these big pieces of land here seem like they might at some point shake off or collapse or crumble or something like that. And so the camera's on this side, thankfully. But you can see how it's right in the middle of all that action right there. Pretty cool to see. Looks like right here is the road as well, that old Crater Rim Drive. Some part of it. All right, so that's the sequence from the release from the 21st. They have a similar release on the 24th, where they once again flew in, and this time started sampling the initial overflows of precursory episode 37. So there they are, doing all that. I won't spend too much time on it. Looking back into the vent again, to see the lava poking up there again as well. And I released another video compilation here of these overflows. So similar view here. I think this might be the same clip, in fact, from the previous view, but here it is to start us off. Show you guys a wide view here of what that bubbling lava. South vent here on the left side. See a little more viscous, not that gas rich, moving kind of slowly through there. And then we'll shift onto a time lapse right here. So I believe this is the V3 camera showing the bubbling dome fountain growing over here on the left at the south vent, pushing out all this degassed lava. And this is a fairly long lasting overflow that they're here giving us sped up minute by minute time lapse of it. So pretty cool. And you can see there it is, the lava withdraws. That particular overflow lurches to a stop. Next one comes up. There's a spatter. I believe we have, yep, there it is, coming right back up, and then we'd have another overflow going back down from there. So I think that's the full photo release. So we'll move right from there to our V3 camera view and show you guys that similar view of the overflows and all those pulses from the south vent there. There were some from the north vent as well that we'll focus on in a minute here, but you can see these various pulses with many of them having this dome over here on the left. Then we have that 36-hour pause there. Some spattering comes back up. And then here we have the north vent turning on and erupting, and there we go. That was the full episode 37 there. So from the reverse angle, here's a V1 camera. There's a north vent with its initial overflows. You can see some spattering. It seems to stop overflowing with action more to south vent. You see there in the background. That's through the 24th. There they both stop overflowing. Still glowing. Changing in intensity. You can see some of the wind direction change. And then let's replay the part at the end here where the fountain actually comes on. And maybe what I'll do here is slow it way down. And this fountain part here. As you can see that, it seems like it's interesting because you almost see two different holes in a north vent. Like there is like some blockage, like a little barrier in the middle dividing them. So when the fountain comes up, it seems to spray in two different directions. The USGS described it as a dual fountain. Also is having a very wide base. It's really spraying out sideways, it seemed like there. And then maybe the V2 camera gives us a little better perspective on that. So let's look at that here. And those are the overflows, south vent, north vent. It's a little bit more challenging visibility from this direction, but catching most of it still here. And then here comes our fountain on the 25th. And there it is right there. So let me, again, slow this one down. And let's pull it back to right in there. You can see a little bit here. There's like a wing going off to the left and then one going off to the right. A little bit of this arc dropping down onto there as well. And I'm not sure if you could see here during this earlier sequence right here, where we actually see, let's pause this right here, see the north vent actually has two distinct sources of fume and glow with some little separation in between them right there. And so that seems likely to have something to do with why the fountain sprayed out in that direction. And didn't seem like we had enough pressure to modify or break that or change it anyway, so it just stayed like that, and that I think might have helped the fountain height stay low as well. All right, so that's the V2, and then let's keep going. Let's look at the F1. And F1 is picking up those initial overflows from the south vent there. A few north vent ones stay pretty close to the vent up in here. So this lasts for 5 days, from the 21st, or 4 days, and 21st to the 25th there, with that day-and-a-half gap. And then the big pulse there at the end. You can see from this angle, these two arms, these two branches reaching across, one reaching around the north edge of the crater all the way to the eastern side, and the other one cutting more directly across the middle, where they seem to touch and then rejoin a couple of places further downslope. So similar view there, the KW camera. Now it does seem like there is something off with the filter, or it's not capturing the full brightness of the flow at night, especially. You can see it's a little bit washed out in daytime too, but here comes Eruption. Looks pretty cool. Episode 37. And you kind of lose this left side of the image here. Seems like it's a little bit too dark. I'm not sure what's going on there, but you do see the fountain and the two arms, two branches there earlier on. So pull it back to the good part. You do see the initial overflows coming off right there. And then the main fountain. So the better view, perhaps the best view of the eruption, has been the B1 camera here. So going back to the overflows, let me zoom it into this area where you can really see these various pulses coming down this big slope. There's a north vent on the right, but here you really see how this is a big mound above the rest of this crater floor, especially near the vents, because of these overflow patterns right here. These flows don't go very far. And so that ends up building this area up more than you really notice one day at a time. And you'll see that in one of our next 2 time lapses here. But here it is. Here's those 4 days of overflows leading up to the fountain. Let me zoom it out here. So here's our day-and-a-half gap and overflows. And then this morning they start again on the 25th. And here come the fountains and the flows you see spreading all the way around. And it's really this central flow you see that hits this eastern wall and splits in two, going both north and south, whereas that northern branch has a little bit less momentum and seems to stall somewhere in there. So let me play this back half of it at least again for you guys. Let's start on 25th here. You can see that coming across once again. Pretty incredible views, and anyone who was in the park from this would be the angle you would be looking at across this lava lake, and you see the late stage crustal overturning there, even one that happened over the course of today as well. And after that, you see mostly this big flat area that's been repaved with that fresh lava having burped out that last amount of gas that was escaping during the overturning process here. Okay, so to finish off the time lapses here, I was going to show you a couple more. This is our daily views, and what I just did was go back just 5 days to the 20th year to show you that as the sequence of what's changed with one image at noon each day, so we can look at the long-term view of what's changing around here. So to start off, this is the KW camera. Let's zoom in at the vent area over here. And one thing that you might notice is how much we fill in this area back over here, right, with these overflows from the south vent. See a little bit from the north vent, but you see how it's really restricted to this area right around here. Nothing else changes beyond that. Right. Otherwise, we're not seeing any slumping over these last 5 days. That seems to have settled down since the previous couple of weeks when we saw that immediately after episode 36, right there. But if you look closely, if you kind of scan and look around at other areas, you don't see much movement anywhere very obvious. Maybe a little bit over here, but it's hard to really see from this angle. But what gets interesting is if you start looking at this zone right in here, right in here. This is this area that's this pond at the bottom of the slope that we've seen overturning. We've wondered if there's like some kind of lava tube underneath here. We've seen lava draining in this area for longer. And clearly we see this flow coming on and actually lapping onto this area. And so it's not clear if that's just pushing on some thin crust and there's still some molten material in there, but what you actually can see is there's a little bit of bulging of the ground in this area around the flow over here. Kind of right near this edge of this flow. So you have to wonder, is that this flow right here coming in and pushing down, or is there some other injection of lava happening beneath the crust that leads to this area over here through perhaps one of these lava tubes we've seen in the past? And so that's a little interesting note there. And that's what's happening before any lava fountain, right? This is a cutoff on the 25th before the, I'm sorry, what is it? Did I cut it off on? Yeah, I think I cut it off on the 25th at noon. So that's before the fountain starts at 2:30. So you really see that bulging just from the overflows and from any possible injection before the fountaining occurs. And likewise, one last time lapse here. This is a B1 camera, same thing, same 5 days here. And so all event areas here in the background, and let's start with that. And we're here, you really can see how these silver overflows build up this slope over time, and how each one of these episodes is really building this big giant mound over here on the background, right? Not only that, you can see some continued movement of this back wall debris slope slumping all the way over here over those 5 days from this angle. And so that's still happening way up there. But otherwise, panning to the east, everything looks quiet until you get to right in this same suspect area, this other circular area near the east side, which if you look closely, doesn't show a whole lot of movement. But there is a day where it does bob a pixel up right there, right in the middle there. So it seems like there's a little bit of movement in there. So another possible suspicion of whether there's any injection of lava happening beneath the crust here. Not an obvious dead giveaway this time, but enough little movement there, which if you imagine this camera is looking across a great distance, that could be a huge amount of movement. We just can't tell from this angle. Just one portion of a pixel here. But that's a little bit suspicious of something as well. So that's the time-lapse views. I think I'd like to bring in Lou here now to talk about some of the other observations from the live streams. How was it for you, Lou? How was this viewing experience?
Oh, like every one of them, adventurous, different. This one was interesting. The first time we haven't seen the south vent in a while, so that changed the dynamics. But there was all kinds of other things happening out there in the caldera. Let's throw up our observation screen here. There we go. So one of the first things that was going on up there that we are familiar with, and you mentioned it earlier, is the tephra didn't reach the highway. But there wasn't much wind. I know you and I were messaging back and forth when it started, and you were telling me up top there wasn't much wind at all. And you can see it on the cams. The plume was going straight up. So it wasn't surprising there was no tephra out on the highway, but check out what's going on in the caldera. This is coming from the V1 camera. It was whipping up there pretty good.
That's really interesting, right? Because besides the actual fallout of lava itself, the tephra itself, which you can see very clearly in that camera there too, but there's also this whole phenomenon of this giant heat source creating its own weather, which can drive winds and pick up the tephra that's already loose on the rim or wherever else it happened to be and blow it around also. So that's not good either. But yeah, right. It's just some big pieces flying across the field right here.
Yeah. This is also the first episode we haven't seen the back wall, the tephra mountain back there filling up. So like you were saying, that the wind is just pulling tephra from all over the caldera and whipping it around. And here's its own weather force. It got some lavanados, tephranado, wind.
And just look how it's going straight up. Like everything yesterday, the plume, all these little vortexes, everything was just vertical. There was just nothing really to push it there.
Yeah, pretty much from the time it started until it shut off last night. So this was the first one. And then if you watch, you see the dust and the tephra moving around inside, but then you got the gases moving around on the outside of it. And now in the back, you're going to see another one generate up on the wall. And then a larger one is about to form and come back around again. It was nonstop.
There's some pulsing happening there too, right, from the fountain, right? It seems like it pulses.
Yep.
Up as this sped up view here, yeah. Fascinating, yeah. And a couple of things. The fountain being a little bit shorter, maybe because of that blockage and the split of it. means it's not going as high to fall further away, but also the lack of wind means combined, hardly anything is falling on the back wall during this episode. But yeah, amazing vortices here. All that dust, not just the gas, but the tephra that's like all smashing into each other is turning into that basically a tephra dust, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like almost like your ash component there. That's just getting remobilized by all that weather.
Last episode, this was happening out in the desert, not inside the caldera like this.
Right.
All right, let's see what else is
cool.
happening here. It was pretty cool. All together too. That wasn't clipped. That was all together.
Right. Oh yeah, all one sequence. Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't see that like when in a sequence with Frodo and Sam getting rescued by the Eagles. There was no dust tornadoes. That would have made it a little more accurate now in hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a real thing for the Hollywood producers.
Absolutely.
If anyone's watching next time.
All right, so we moved into the evening, and this is the actual shutdown of the north vent. But the reason I sped this up here because we're watching back behind there, the south vent the hydrogen flames were pretty much going nonstop throughout the entire episode. But take a look at the Stromboli action of that south vent once the north vent shuts off. It's spattering. It just really picks up. And this is real speed now. I slowed it down to normal speed. So north vent just shut off, and it's going.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Yeah, we've seen since episode 36, we saw a lot of slumping. So we had some suspicion that might change the dynamics of events. I'm not sure that I would have guessed that the north vent itself would like shut off because clearly there's an opening for it there still. So I think it's something else other than that personally. But that might be one component of what's pinching things tighter or changing the nature. But the other thing that's pretty obvious is like the lava coming out. More lava was coming out of the south vent. That's that earlier degassed old lava, right? So something between those two vents, it seems like that more degassed lava that's stickier and holds bigger pockets of gas that has that kind of behavior like that is stuck somehow under the south vent, and like that big rapids, the turbulent rapids is bypassing underneath it on its way to the north vent right next door. That's really fascinating, right? So, we've seen it's kind of trying to flush out all this old lava to make space for the froth to come up and start an actual fountain, but it's not cleaning 100% of it out, right? I'm saying there's almost like some backwash of that stuff that's stuck in there, right? And I kind of imagine when you look at a river, like a rapids, it's got those little eddies, and you can sometimes just see a leaf just floating in the froth, right in the middle of all this turbulence all around it, but it can just kind of sit there. And I know, so to me, I imagine was there some kind of process where you can actually have this degas magma is still right there, right, clearly under the south vent, able to escape through it if it needs to push out. But once the north vent opens, it doesn't need to. It can just sit there, kind of almost floating as everything else is roaring past it. It's got to be something. I don't know. That's one idea that makes sense to me, right? Because clearly it's still open, but it's open in a way where it's pushing out the degas lava first, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't see as much from the north vent during that same sequence leading up to this.
Right.
And that changed from earlier, from in the last week where we did see him coming out from both, right? And then something, maybe that was flushing from both. And then you got to some threshold where, there's enough space in the north vent that you can start bubbling over that way. But over here, you can just keep this thing just floating almost, right? Just in a holding pattern. Because of some kind of geometry that I can't describe, or we don't really know, right? And that's where that could be affected by the slumping and the whole movement of all this stuff above it, right? Lava draining back in, hardening, coming back out, scouring the conduit with that force, So anyways, there's a lot to think about going on in there.
That was a lot, Phil. That was a lot of
Well, so you warned me. That's the main question today. Is what's going on? Why did this happen? Not join the party today, right? That's a great question. I don't know. It's just
that Phil and I talked before the stream about this a little bit. So I kind of told him what was coming.
Yeah, so I might as well throw it out there right here now
Yeah,
when we're looking at
good.
it, right? This is a great place to talk about that, how you really see a different kind of lava coming from both vents over the course of this whole precursory through the episode 37.
Yeah. So right after we had the spattering going on there, you can see it's 2340. It immediately right in there. I just cut it because there was one little pause, but the flames started up, and these hydrogen flames, they were consistent pretty much the entire episode, and definitely more obvious once the north vent shut off. They were just going, and you can see USGS was even up last night late, moving cameras because they were keeping an eye on that themselves. It was fascinating to watch this.
Yeah, it really shut off to me like in 2 stages almost, because early on we were like around 6.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, okay, well, the fountain isn't as vigorous as it was before. It doesn't look as much. But then it stayed at that steady state almost, barely weakening, just dragging on until it finally shut off all at once.
Yeah, 100%. We've typically seen the north vent just shut off quickly from the 400 to 0.
Right.
This one here, you're right. It seemed like a couple hours on this one. There's a shot from. Go ahead, Dane.
No, I was just gonna say it just had those different stages to it.
Yeah.
Where it was like, okay, we're not getting the south vent, it looks like, and we're not as vigorous as we were a little bit earlier. And usually that shortly afterwards, the thing falls off pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But this one didn't.
Yeah, one of the pieces that when you're talking about how it kind of was slowing down, Phil had brought up the V2 camera, and you could see the kind of the arm shooting off one side of it, and that's what we saw shutting off first before the main part of the north vent. This is a shot from one of our viewers. Cappy put this up as a chunk of tephra out in the parking lot near Waikahuna.
Decent size one.
You're right. Yeah. And here's some shots of the tephra flying around the V3 camera. Cameras are camera's pretty good to be able to pause it and actually catch some. It's a good shot.
Yeah. I saw one of them. It looked like there was a shadow over the vent, but it was just a piece of tephra falling in front of the camera. It made it really look weird.
Darken the whole camera.
Yeah. You know.
Here's a from the ground shot.
So if I'm where I had to exit that a little shorter.
Up at Waikahuna.
It's that dual fountain character right there. The left arm and the straight up arm.
Jade had another one from way over at Kanakekoi. Another shot from up top. Not a lot of people up top at Waikahuna. Maybe 20, 25. It's a great place to view.
Yeah, it's surprising. Yeah.
On the left side.
And here's one last shot from Stephanie Lee. Kind of gives you, this is the lava. Phil, what are we calling this? Do we have an unofficial name of the tephra-nado, lava-nado, the vortex? What's our official name here?
Volcano. Yeah. Unofficially, yeah, you've said all kinds of things, which whatever people understand, right? That's kind of but our deal is to try to demystify some of the jargon, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's really the thing, right?
Yep.
It's hard to really nail it down and be picky about it. So
here's from on the ground perception. Here's the emotions, and then if you've ever been up there and witnessed anything like this is pretty typical when anything happens up at the caldera.
There's a tornado. There's a tornado on the left side.
What the heck?
It's because it's so hot. Whoa!
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah, right?
There's a tornado.
There is a tornado next to our eruption because it is so hot. Here for the price of life.
And there's a wonder you just can't replicate, right? It's really one of the wonders of the world here.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
epic,
there are our observations
epic
for
of it.
episode 37.
All right, let me just jump back in here and
Yeah.
just say we have some late breaking releases from the USGS, actually.
Oh, all right.
Release here of episode 37 photographs. So there they are. Like watched an eruption overnight with binoculars, some close-up views of the channels, including there was this. I'm not sure something that you picked up there. There's a particular standing wave point there, like, you know, you can see from the V1 camera, it's kind of, I don't know, halfway, but there it is, zoomed in on a telephoto view. So pretty cool to see that.
We focused on that a lot of time during the evening because we were gauging the speed and the flow of the lava to see as we were watching the shutdown that took a long time, or longer than past episodes. That's what we were watching, was that exact spot.
So we have a release video as well here, shot from people on the ground next to the next to those live stream cameras, but actually, you know, I don't know, using some other camera. Nice landing of a spatter here on the left around the vent, but we can see the massive impact zone right around the base of the fountain there. And there's a flaming with those little tracers almost shooting out of there. And there's that, splash zone, start of that rapids where the lava is funneling into this channel right over here to head east across. And there's our standing wave. Like actually a couple, looks like 1, 2, 3 in a row there. Pretty cool. Different channel lurching along there. You can see the further away from the vents they get, the more sluggish the flows were. And overall, it seems like these flows were a little more sluggish, it seems like. So maybe that's part of the mixing of the lava kind of up there. So, all right, Lou, yeah, that's just a little late breaking addition to throw into you.
All right, so that's observations for 37. Shall we jump into community corner and keep us going?
Yeah. Oh, you.
All right. Let's jump in here. There we go. Whoops, not that one. There we go.
You got a
all right
there, huh?
Yeah, we'll go through this. Everything's pretty much about the same. The park stuff is open. Everything is functioning up there. Viewing is all around the park. They just remind everybody, please try to stay in bounds. The Welcome Center is open. Those are legitimate hours, 9 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. I verified that. And there is your Welcome Center. Jump in there. It's where you can find the park rangers. Center is the visitor center is closed for renovation, but park rangers, NPS volunteers, and NPS passport stamp station, Dane, is up there, and the junior ranger coloring books. All right, you can find that right.
Same.
It is.
Yeah, looks almost the same.
There is a shot of the Welcome Center. You can park around the new HVO building that's going up, and there's also parking around there. They also remind that parking in front of KMC is for registered guests only. There's a shot of the new visitor center lanai being built. Look how that is coming together. It's going to be massive. Nice outdoor area. That'll be done hopefully the late 2026. So one more year of building, but it's coming right along. It's good to see the frame up. Parking. Try not to park on the side of the road up there. There's cars everywhere. You'll get boxed in. I talked to somebody today about they parked on the side of the road and they were upset because somebody parked too close in front and too close behind. You're not really supposed to be parking on the side of the road anyway. Find a safe parking space. And you can see this shot here. It's from David Finley, my mate in Australia. You can see the bumper on that one. It's probably caused from parking on the side there. Hey, the lights on the lava tube are back on. I didn't know if you guys knew that, but the power had been restored to Nahuku and the new nearby Comfort Station. The lava tube is open 24 hours with lights on between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Use a flashlight if you explore the cave outside of those hours. Closures are all still the same. Roads are closed. Trails still getting worked on, but it's coming. It's coming. Don't worry. If you're you've applied for a backcountry permit, get a hold of them. They may be able to give you a ride. Otherwise, you're riding a bike or you're hoofing it. Power pole replacement is still going on near the park entrance, and they'll have that up there. It's a big project with a lot of work, and fortunately, we've had a little less rain. They can keep going. There's our temporary closure of the Kīlauea Iki Trail Western Switchbacks. They're going to have that back together. It's still open down there, but the completion date has been pushed to December 31st. We will see. Lava viewing all over the park. I know that a lot of you hang out in the Volcano House and have been walking over to Waldron's Ledge. Good spot to hang out there. You can also walk the trail all the way up to Waikahuna and Iki down to Devastation Trail to Keanakekoi. I have this picture. I need to update this one. This was from inside my truck. Exposure is a real thing. We are in the shift. Hey, you guys, we were talking about the no wind, right? And Kona low season's coming up on us, right? How is that going to affect us on this future episodes? Wind's going to shift?
Depends on the day.
Right? Where we normally have that east to west, we're going to get that south to north push.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
more likely.
Yep.
Each one's a roll of the dice. Yeah.
Pay attention when you're up there. Safety is your responsibility as per the National Park Service. Bring your sunblock, a hat, and plenty of water up there because there are no water bottle filling stations. You're going to need your own. They'll have them back open eventually, but you can buy water at Volcano House and up at KMC. Stewardship at the park. The summit's going on December 6th, 13th, and 20th. You can meet at 8:45 up there and help take out the invasive non-native plant species that are going on. And ranger guided programs are happening up there. There's pretty much every day. There's different things, different programs. You just need to go in and talk to them. It's not always on their calendar, so they may have something that just didn't put on there. So it's always best to stop in there make that your first stop. And a walk in the past with Dr. Thomas Jagger. This is going to be a pretty amazing presentation put on by Dick Hirschberger. It's his final performance of A Living History, a walk in the past. It's December 13th at 11. We are going to go if we can. I know that's on our schedule. We don't want to miss this. I know if I'm driving, we're going early. And I recommend you all go there early because it will be packed down there. Hopefully they will set up. Philip, last time you and I were down there for one of Jackie's performances, they had the canopies all set up outside, gave us a little bit more room, right? Maybe they'll be able to do that for this because some of the presentations that we've been down there inside, it's pretty tight. And remembering Holope is happening. Doors open at 11 on Saturday, November 29th. And I do have a story, The Night of Howling Dogs. The author of this book, Graham Salisbury, will be doing a reading. That is what's going on. You can check that out. And Philip, I know you like to talk a little bit about this as well, since it is tsunami related.
Yeah, it's just really an amazing. It's one of the fatal tsunamis we've had, the most recent ones, right? Obviously not the big ones of 46 and 1960 that hit Hilo, but it is a locally generated one. It's a great model for what could happen and how we really need to be aware of what might happen if you're on a coast for a long time, camping, for example, right? See the ocean recede, head inland and uphill. It's as simple as that, really.
All right.
Don't wait for any warnings. Yeah.
Nope. And we are still in our end of year fundraiser. You can donate to us at hveri.org/donate and help support broadcasts like these, our volcano education, our digital resilience, and our youth leadership programs. We appreciate your support there. And you can sign up for our email list. We got our email out yesterday of the notification of episode 37, as well as our newsletter goes out there. And what's happening here at the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. There we go, Dane. You're up.
Yeah. All right. Well, we want to thank everybody. We want to thank everybody for tuning in today, but we'd also like to thank the County of Hawaii, through the VIVI grant program for helping fund this program, as well as the county support for our digital resilience and youth development programs. That support ends up helping us produce this weekly show and make consistent posts and upkeep of Hawaii Tracker. So we appreciate that. But everybody that showed up today, you really are the reason why we do this and help keep everything, the digital doors open, as we so speak. So we have a whole bunch of supporters there that have made generous donations to either on YouTube. We have a YouTube giving fundraiser going over there, but also over on our website, over on HVERI.org/donate on screen there. You are so inclined. These are tax deductible since we are a 501c3 community-based organization. All right. And what do we got on the, it looks like we have a bunch of donations from
I'm putting them all in there. You should be, we should be current right now.
All right. We had $20 from Norm, and then we had a $10 donation from Raven, a $10 donation from Lorna, and a $50 donation from Scott to Ed, longtime supporters here, as well as a whole bunch of anonymous donations. So we appreciate that support there. We just had a whole bunch of little, not little, even $20. Throw those on screen there, all those anon ones. So appreciate all that support.
Got one more from Raven I didn't put up there. So Raven, thank you.
One. Yeah, thank you, Raven.
Hello, everybody.
Right. And I think that catches us up and gets us into the back half.
That's it. Thanks, gentlemen. So let's turn to Kīlauea monitoring. Let me get my screen back on stage here. Find the right button. There we go.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. All right. And all right, we'll start with the text updates from USGS. Is highlighting a few things. We're going to go back to the Friday update, where we'll just say that they're noting brief periods of spattering. This will be Thursday night after our previous week's update. Let's jump ahead to the next day, Saturday, where they say, okay, that intermittent overflows begin just after 9:30 a.m., starting from the south vent, continuing through the day and overnight. Since then, 30 overflows, 2/3 from the south vent and only 1/3 from the north vent. Right, so you're saying maybe about 10 overflows from the north vent, and all the rest from that point on from the south vent, which is kind of what we saw in those time-lapse videos as well. Right, they note the dome fountain on there as well, with a 5 to 10 meter, 15 to 30 foot tall height of that dome fountain, lasting for up to 25 minutes, with increasing seismic intensity and decrease in tilt during those same periods, and continuing movement from there. You can note that here that they're still noting SO2 emissions of 1,200 to 1,500 tons per day in the background levels. This is on Saturday. But when we get to Sunday, overflows continue. Overnight flows were longer. Low dome fountains still there. We've kind of seen the overflows already, so I'll kind of move quickly past that. We're still showing that same range of SO2 on the Sunday morning update, but by Monday morning, they note the overflows are in their pause, cease after midnight the previous night. Glow and spatter continue, but then coming to the gas, plumes of gas are visible from both south and north vents. SO2 emissions increased yesterday, so it'll be Sunday, to approximately 4,000 tons per day during a period of deflation. But by Monday morning, they believed had returned to typical eruption pause levels between 12 and 1,500 tons per day right there. So they're noting an increase in the gas there on Sunday, maybe a little bit less on Monday, but then coming to the next day, Tuesday, I'll just jump ahead to the gas there. They then note on Tuesday they remain at 3,000 to 4,000 tons per day, higher than the other levels. And this is the same day that the fountains begin. Okay, it's interesting to note how that raised a couple or more days ahead of time right there. And so by Tuesday morning, they're still noting no overflows yesterday, but that actually spatter overnight, and actually a couple hours after this is when the overflows would resume. So they note prior to ceasing at that point, there have been 73 overflows. So then moving forward in the day, we come to our release of our volcanic activity notice that we call the VAN, as well as its partner VONA, the notice for aviation, that kind of all pair together and have largely the same text. So this one's easier to read, the VAN. So we can see here was released at 2:59 p.m., noting the 2:30 p.m. onset of episode 37, with early fountain heights at 400 feet, increasing rapidly, but only from the north vent. Then it gives some context of what happened in the past. That's really just the announcement of the start of it there. So then moving forward 9 hours, we see the end announced for 11:39 p.m. after 9.2 hours of continuous fountaining. Maximum heights of 600 feet, 180 meters, lasting 9.2 hours and producing an estimated 8.2 million cubic yards or 6.3 million cubic meters of lava. That puts the combined average eruption rate over 200 cubic yards per second or 190 cubic meters, which is about half of the previous rate we've noted, and flows covering about 3/4 of the floor of Halemaʻumaʻu. They note eruptive plume heights reaching up to more than 14,000 feet, 4,200 meters above sea level. And that's the highlights that we have immediately afterwards right there. Right, so that one is the VAN. There's also a VONA released hand in hand with it. And then we have this morning's update where they recap similarly the same numbers there. They note the repressurization of the reservoir as indicated by the ground tilt and the tremor and the gas releases there, suggesting another episode is coming possible in the coming weeks, but there's not enough data yet to say exactly when. Right? So here they note the similar stats once again. They note that the SO2 rates often exceed 50,000 tons per day during fountain. This morning it was passive outgassing. They do note the 4.6 earthquake that occurred in the south flank yesterday, 11:49 p.m., with shaking reported across the island of Hawaii. We'll look at that info statement in a few minutes here. But then they note pressure looks like it's repressurizing based on the tilt. More data is needed, at least a week away. So that is the summary of the text updates that we have here. Last I checked, and maybe it's worth me trying to reload this again live here, but there was not an update to their table of episode 37. Still not. There's still a lot of catching up to do, obviously. But based on those stats that they just gave us, we can make some calculations. They noted that around 200, 190 cubic meters per second is the rate here, right? So there we are, episode 37, which is in line with what we saw all before these last three, 34, 35, 36, which were the ones that had dual fountains, both erupting at high rates, basically doubling the rates for those 3 periods there. And so we'll see if we return to that, but this one was more like what we saw before that, the first de-escalation, so to speak, here in a while that we've seen of this. So the volume, our volume here at a little bit over 6 million is a very respectable, we'll call it. It's still a huge amount of lava there, but it's just not as high as some of these more recent ones, right? It's still higher than most of the ones we saw early in the eruption, many of these first 20 or so episodes here, right? But that slightly lower, right? I mean, it might be like close to half of what we saw for episode 35, right? But that value right there, combined with that longer duration, is what gives us that low discharge rate. And here's our max fountain height graph once again. So there we are, just underneath 200 meters, 600 feet or so. And as we noted, that sometimes is affected by the geometry of the nozzle, right? And we noted how these last two, the most recent ones that were shorter than this, were actually inclined because of some change of shape of the north vent as well. So here we are, a little bit of a different shaped nozzle on a north vent, splitting the fountain in two, one going sideways, one going more up, and altogether, neither one reaching more than 600 feet because of that. So the duration, we'll note here, was showing episode 5 and on because the episode 4 was super long. It really blows out the scale of the graph here. So you can see we're a little bit longer there at 9 hours. Our previous one was at about 5 hours, one of our shortest ones. And so we're back to this longer duration. And That follows a 16-day pause, which is also in line with more recent episodes. And so really the one prior to this was our record at just over 3 weeks. And we are somewhat within that pattern and waiting to see what happens here post episode 37. We'll see, but obviously at least a week, and it could easily be 2 weeks or possibly 3 weeks, just based on recent trends. So that's the graphs we can get from the data. We have the actual USGS graphs as well, and we can look quickly at these too. So here we are with the laser rangefinder pointing at the spot in the crater floor that was measuring 1,011.5 meters above sea level and jumped up to 1,013.5 meters. So 2 meters, maybe 6 feet jump right there. That's about the thickness of the flow that came across that one spot. So it must have just been one kind of sheet with that initial onslaught. It wasn't where the channel is, for example. Right? And it's not where the overflows from the south vent are building up that area over and over ahead of time. It only saw the one main pulse from the fountain at the onset of eruption there. So there's our tilt graph, and blue is a summit showing that gradual but slower buildup. A little bit of a stall there in the inflation rate before the onset of 37, and did kind of start up quickly there at the end and have our typical deflation pattern with a coincident with the lava coming out. And lava stops 10 minutes later, so it looks like it's the same spot on this graph. You see this big spike of the earthquake that hit the south flank. So that's the blue line there, and the typical recovery coming up. So we can see we are recharging, building towards another episode, most likely. The green line is the rift zone at Pu'o'o. It's showing this long-term, very slow, almost flat and very slow deflation pattern you see there. It's present here before and after the earthquake, even though it's pretty soon there. There is some small offset, right? So, that the ground did jerk and move and stay moved. Some work was accomplished by this earthquake to make space there in the earth. You can see just by this one signal, it jerked and then landed back and stayed at a slightly different spot right there. But the overall pattern is still of deflation, so it doesn't seem like there's any signal of magma going into the area quite yet. But that is the big question when we come to talk about the earthquake here, is what does that mean for the future of the Kīlauea system, and how does it fit into the overall big picture of that? So for now, we'll just look at these earthquake rates are still very much below a background level of about 30 per day. It's just the one big one that kind of skewed the amount of energy released here this past week. And there it is at that depth in the yellow range right there. And you can see it doesn't have too many aftershocks. It does have a population kind of above it that seems to be aftershocks, but yeah, it hasn't trod on for too much by the looks of it here. The blues are the Deep Pahala hotspot zone. That's still doing its occasional pulsing, kind of at a slow rate, really, overall. These are the blue ones over here in this bottom left corner. There's our spot right underneath this normal fault on the edge of the coastal plain here, in the Pali. Just south of Pu'o'o. There's Pu'o'o, so this is really that middle east rift zone. And here's where we've discussed in the past how the structure Kīlauea is a summit reservoir area. It's got these two branches, the southwest and the southeast, and some possible connections through here in a Kauai, right? So you basically have this big triangle area of summit storage. And then it wants to feed in the rift zone. And the rift zone has to spread by the south flank moving, and that's what opens a pathway for the magma. We have not seen any sign of magma injection since the 2024 eruption, which we've learned, from talking to experts, was also from south flank movement, actually creating space and on a almost clockwork cycle, having some kind of intrusion eruption happen there. So after that occurred, we're back to our summit reservoir here. Magma is still stuck up in this area, and likely more so in this area right here, right now. And so we look for someday, will it reoccupy, or when will it reoccupy this East Rift Zone and Upper East Rift connector, and to the East Rift Zone itself right through here. And so this is part of that whole story of this moving outwards, continuing the process of opening space. I don't think this by itself was enough to do it, but it's the pattern of it, right? The fact that we built up enough pressure here by moving this whole south flank area first south of the summit, where this is where the most back and forth occurs, with this filling and venting of lava, right? Mostly happening here. But eventually, as all this all this piece of land is all connected, right? So if you pull this thing enough, eventually this one wants to come also, and eventually this wants to come also, and that's kind of how the whole thing moves along. So a little bit of a shift further east, showing a buildup of this strain, of the stress to create the strain of moving the ground and keeping it moved afterwards. And long term, that's a pattern that will lead to magma being allowed to inject into the East Rift. So that's the context of this. We know that's going to happen someday. That's why we do this, to keep all of our communities informed and educated. And when something does happen, we know how the volcano works to explain to our neighbors and those who are not as informed, and could use the information to make important decisions, for example. So that's the earthquake map there for the last week. For the last month, we have very similar data. There's that same step in laser, similar to the previous episode. Similar drop in tilt as a previous episode as well, with our little earthquake anomaly right in the middle there. There is a sand hill station, didn't pick up the shaking quite as much on that side, but earthquake counts, depth versus time over the last month, showing a little bit more of that concentration and variability of the deep Pahala earthquakes and the shallower summit ones. We noted how really it was a couple of weeks ago, we saw the beginning of these almost precursor earthquakes on the south flank, how they were getting to be bigger and showing continued movement of that area. And lo and behold, there is a little bit more movement further to the east. And nothing to be alarmed about there, but it's just part of the process and why this land is very dynamic to live on. So the last 3 months, the last 11 months now, and we've passed the 11-month anniversary of the eruption here. So the patterns we're all fitting into all the patterns there. Lava accumulating, earthquake still low, and summit caldera expanding north and south between episodes and releasing in between. And that's all of our data right there. So to show you the earthquakes a little bit more, just to note once again, the information statement from USGS, 9 miles southeast of Fern Forest on island Hawaii at a depth of 5 kilometers, 3 miles below sea level. No impact on either volcano, following the end of episode 37 by 10 minutes, but does not appear directly related to the eruption. Most earthquakes in this region are caused by movement of the south flank of Kīlauea. Location, depth, and wave forms recorded as part of the earthquake are consistent with slip along the south flank faults. So hopefully they explained it's not directly related, but it's indirectly related because everything's indirectly related on Kīlauea volcano right there. So that's the announcement. Here is the map, which is supposed to have earthquakes on it. Let's have it show some earthquakes here. Let's try to force a reload. There it is. So these are colored by depth. The blue's deep, the yellows and reds shallower. So you see a lot of these deeper colors all around, concentrated around Pahala, around the hot spot feeder zone. And then focusing in on more of the reds and yellows, there's the Kīlauea summit population. There's not really a whole lot to look at. There is our south flank event, 4.61, 3.6 miles down. A couple aftershocks showing up right there, but nothing really huge either. And then here on this eastern flank of Mauna Loa, we've noted before this interaction of the two volcanoes as they pressurize and depressurize. As noted by the GPS, we see the crater extending and contracting, right, by many centimeters every time. And so you can imagine that can change the force field, we'll call it, all the stresses inside the rock from all directions in between here. So that's part of this population too, but also nothing alarming to look at there. So filtering these by size, our 4.6 is right there, but also a respectable 3.4 happening up offshore of Kohala. Also about 3 miles deep, 3.4, another one of these kind of settling events that can happen at any depth, really. And then another above 3, magnitude 3.2, almost 19 miles down underneath Waikoloa area, west Mauna Kea, also one of these settling events too. So a little bit more active, a couple of 2.9s down in Pahala and offshore Kīlauea. And yeah, those are earthquakes this past week. So unless there's a volcano watch actually issued by the USGS here, then that's all I have to share. And looks like not yet here. We'll have to wait for after. Thank Thanksgiving.
Looks like it. All right.
All right, guys.
Yeah, not much in the way of questions. A lot of questions would be like, so tell us about, like, what's the details about the earthquake? And then you go into the details about the earthquake immediately afterwards.
Well, that's great.
Convenient. That.
Yeah, because we know that for every person that actually asks the question, someone else likely has it but doesn't ask it. So hopefully we will address many of those. Obviously, there's infinite questions out there. What's happening here? What's happening, right? But like, the idea is not to,
I got
be an
one
authority on anything, but just to discuss what's going on. Yeah. What, we got something?
Yeah. So one of the things that I see in some messages under some of our videos, one of them is, if you look at the V3 camera that's going on right now, there's some flames happen. The hydrogen flames have already started, or they continued from the end of 37. Get the gas pistoning going on. Is there an official, this is kind of, I'm just putting this question together from a paragraph. Is there a determined spot of when we officially say precursory activity begins? Are we already started precursory activity for 38, or what has to happen?
If I was to throw something out there, do you want to go, Phil? You got something?
No, go ahead. Yeah. I mean, I'm just watching the patterns like you guys, but yeah, what do you see?
I would say that it's twofold. One, you need, have the stuff happening at the surface, spatter or overflows, maybe more towards overflows, but also for the tilt to be primed, right? You can, if it misses around and it's not primed, it's just like degassing or, whatever surface feature it isn't precursory as much as it is just, doing stuff. It's still an active eruption. Nobody says the eruption stops. It's just the episodes that we're talking about when we talk about it, episode 38 or whatever we're now, setting up towards.
Yeah, I think it's a moving target, really, right? They've changed how they've defined things over time. And that's part of the answer also, right? And I don't know. I think what I see is that they're calling it when the overflows begin, right? We saw the first one for this cycle, for example. They say precursory activity began with overflows from and that to me is them sharing what their criteria is at the moment, at least, as when they write that. Right. Yeah, interesting thing to think about there. But yeah, I mean, there's a phase of before, there's a phase of during, there's a phase of afterwards. We see the slumping, like the draining, crustal overturning, all that's like after, right? That's kind of getting to your point of where is the tilt? Is the tilt still high, still low, or did it get back high again? For it to be precursor.
I have a question. Lou, can you tell us about the Abby warning system?
The Abby warning system. Well, there's a lot of talk about when earthquakes are imminent, that the frogs, the koki stop chirping, the animals all know that something's coming. And Abby, last night I was sitting right here, and Abby normally is like me at midnight sleeping, but she was up and she was anxious and she was all in my face, licking my face all around me. I got her away from me and she stood in the hallway looking at me and came back again. And it was right then that the earthquake happened. So apparently Abby is our unofficial monitor here at the house. But yeah,
so
she definitely,
when Abby gets all weird, it's either, there's a giant earthquake coming or a squirrel or the mailman.
Most likely. She's weird like 85% of the time anyway, so I didn't think anything of it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. So it's coincidence, call it a coincidence, or she was extremely, there she is already back in again. She, or just like now, she hears me talking in here, so she wants to come in and hang out. So I didn't really even think anything of it until
I'm gonna just start moving under the desk now. And
yes, right. She gives me the look. I know the look now. Right. We just had the
either earthquake or I want a treat.
Yes, which is most likely both.
Yeah, well, if she can detect earthquakes, she deserves treats.
That's right. 100%.
See, mine, he constantly hits my chair, and I think it's an earthquake.
Right? Yeah.
So every once in a while, I'll send you guys a message like, "Hey, you guys
Right.
feel that?" And you're like, "No, we didn't."
Nope.
And I'm like, "Okay, never mind."
I have been on with you on a call so many times, and you look up at me like, "Did you feel that?" So many times. Your dog's down there scratching.
All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Yeah, Night
Yeah,
of the
that's
Howling
amazing.
Dogs. If you want to describe any howling dogs of this last earthquake too, then yeah, feel free to
Yeah.
tell your story in our chat here. But it is the night before Thanksgiving here, so we'll wrap it up here and sign off and come back to our usual schedule on Thursdays next week. All right, guys, we don't expect any episode before then, so
Nope.
take care of yourselves and your loved
You
ones.
too.
And
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yep. Enjoy the
all right,
turkey.
guys, yeah. So from our nonprofit HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, for Dane DuPont, Lou Atori, I'm Philip Ong. Until next week, Thursday, aloha, everyone.